Good morning, distinguished guests. We're very pleased to have you joining the session for session 3.2 on accreditation and partnership modalities to leverage GCF financing. Today, you'll hear from a number of distinguished guests from NDAs, from direct access entities, and from an international access entity about their experiences in terms of being able to have a dialogue on how to identify the best suited partners for GCF investments in programming. Before we go into the session, I'd like to introduce our panel members. After that, we will have a very brief presentation about accreditation and partnerships to GCF, followed by a series of questions and dialogues with our distinguished panel speakers. First, I have here the NDA for Belize, the CEO, Dr. Osman Martinez. Next, I have Ms. Nayari Diaz-Perez, from the Protected Area Conservation Trust PACT, the direct access entity from Belize. I next have Mr. Enk from Hasbank, the direct access entity and private sector entity from Mongolia. We also have distinguished speaker, Mr. Petrus Mutiali, the Deputy Director, Minister of Environment, Forestry and Tourism for the NDA of Namibia. Mr. Benedict Labanda, CEO for the Environmental Investment Fund of Namibia, direct access entity. And last but not least, Ms. Ilona Porsche, Head of GCF Business Development Unit from GIZ. With that, I'd like to have a warm welcome and round of applause for the panelists. With that, first, again, we will go into a very brief presentation about accreditation and partnerships for GCF. As you all know, GCF is a partnerships institution. We could not work without you, our partners, our NDAs, our accredited entities. You are very key to enable GCF in order to deliver on climate finance and climate action. There are a number of different types of partnerships. The accredited entity role is one of those roles. It is a very specific one to be able to program GCF financing. That means that accredited entities are able to develop, they're submitting and designing funding proposals in accordance with the GCF investment criteria, being able to also deploy that capital in the management oversight of projects and programs so that we're able to see the results on the ground from those very projects. Accredited entities as programming partners are responding to country priorities on programming for climate action. There are also other types of partners, including executing entities that may be working specifically with accredited entities. These are not organizations that need to go through the accreditation process, but instead they are very focused on executing particular activities or components of a funding proposal. These are organizations that may be local institutions, they may be advisory firms, a number of different organizations that can be a part of the GCF action on the ground. We also have a group of partners that are co-financing projects. These are organizations that may seek to provide financing for climate action, but may not want to undertake the full role and responsibilities of accredited entities in managing projects from start to finish. Instead, they're providing co-financing in order to enable the projects and GCF impact to go further beyond the initial GCF investment. Beyond the programming partners, we also have readiness delivery partners. Delivery partners are those that help facilitate the implementation of the GCF Readiness and Preparatory Support Program, which helps to facilitate support to build and strengthen the capacities of our national designated authorities, and particularly our direct access entities in their roles and responsibilities, including for programming development and deployment. Readiness delivery partners are focused on providing technical assistance and capacity building in that regard. These are just but a few of the different types of partnerships that GCF can offer, with namely the programming partners as the accredited entities. What is important to note is that it is key to know what is the end goal? What are you seeking to deliver and how will you deliver upon that? Each of these roles plays a very important role within the broader partnership for GCF, but it is important to choose the most suitable to your organization. In terms of the programming partners for GCF, we have an accreditation framework that guides how we onboard institutions that become accredited entity partners. There are a series of standards that GCF has for fiduciary, environmental, social, and gender-related management, which we expect that all partners are able to have at a corporate and an institutional level. This means that any project that is brought forward to GCF under the accredited entities development will already have and be able to meet our standards for fiduciary, environmental, social, and gender safeguarding. In addition to that, we have two access modalities. One is direct access. This enables institutions at the local level. They can be subnational, national, or regional institutions based in developing countries to access directly GCF financing. And as a part of that access, it is, as mentioned, the roles and responsibilities for overall project management, development, and oversight throughout the course of that particular project or program. International access entities may also be accredited to the GCF. Today, we have 113 partners, including 71 direct access entities that operate across the globe, providing options to NDAs and countries to select which are the best and most suitable to bring forward the specific funding proposals. In terms of new ways of working with GCF, we have just recently this year, our board has approved the project-specific accreditation assessment approach. PSAA is a new modality for how we intend to operate, which will be launched next year in April. This is a new way of programming where we will be looking at the funding proposal itself, and alongside that, looking at the capacities of each institution to be able to deploy that particular project. While it may seem that this is quite limited in scope, in fact, our intention is to see how we can further progress and speed up access to GCF resources, where we're better matchmaking the intent of the single project or program being brought forward and aligning that with the necessary capabilities that would be needed on the ground by the entity to deploy that particular project. With that, before I conclude, again, just to reiterate that we do have a number of different partnerships that are available at GCF. The accredited entity role is only one of those roles, enabling the programming of climate finance, executing entities, the co-financiers, and separately for the readiness and preparatory support program, our delivery partners. Through these partnerships, we're able to move forward with climate action, and we very much hope that you'll be able to come along with us for the journey. With that, thank you very much for this introduction. We'll now move on to the discussion for today. First, I'd like to invite, as you have seen earlier today, we have a set of panelists, as mentioned, from NDAs, from accredited entities, including direct access and international access entities. With the view that, as you know, programming is centered to the GCF and the identification of partners against that particular programming, choosing those roles and responsibilities is also very much dependent upon that programming direction. I'd like to ask Dr. Osman Martinez, as CEO and the NDA for Belize. As the NDA of Belize, you have nominated a number of applicants for accreditation to GCF. This includes PACT, who is, of course, right next to you here on the stage. Also, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, or 5Cs, as a regional direct access entity. Could you share your country's experience in terms of developing a strategy or approach to identifying programming priorities? And how did you find the best suited entities to be able to respond to your programming needs? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. In addition, we need to add that in addition to PAC and 5Cs, we are also in the process of accrediting our development finance corporation, DFC, which is a development bank, the Ministry of Economic Development, and Belize Social Investment Fund. The process is to understand the strategies. We need to understand the macro philosophy of the direction that the new administration led by our Prime Minister, the Honorable John Briceño, is focusing. And we are moving away from a traditional economic system to a more of a modern economic system. And to achieve such goals, it is important to, one, look at the priorities for programming with GCF are aligned to our national priorities and strategies, such as the medium-term development strategy, the climate finance strategy, our NDC strategies, and blue bond and the blue bond commitments, as it has been highlighted in different presentations by our Honorable Minister Christopher Koyi at this event. Secondly, we'll look at the sector-specific targets within these documents to help to identify where investments need to be made. So, for example, looking at adaptation, mitigation, and cross-cutting targets. And the third one is to look at the stakeholders consultation, where site visits, projects, idea submissions to the ministry, and also to assist in identifying priorities for GCF programming. I would like to end by saying that even though there is a wide consultation which is well accepted, our priority is to enable a friendly environment for academia, as academia has the experts to do scientific research and development and to help us to produce data and to analyze the data using scientific methods.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martinez. If I can now invite Ms. Nayara Diaz-Perez, the Executive Director of PACT, as one of the nominated entities and having been accredited as the first direct access national entity in Belize, if you could perhaps share your experiences through the accreditation process and how, as now a direct access entity, you're responding in your programming objectives to the country's program, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. We, as a national direct access entity, proactively engaged our NDA to discuss the country programming needs and the country program that GCF and the NDA were working on. Given that our institution has an institutional mandate to support the implementation of our country's NDCs, we identified ourselves as a viable candidate for accreditation that could help to achieve the country's objectives. Because of the nature of our institution as a conservation trust fund, we have the structure and capacity within the institution to be able to have been accredited for grant award as well as project implementation. We were already accredited by the Adaptation Fund. We had a record as a fiduciary manager for institutions such as the German Development Bank, the World Bank, and other partners. And we also had experience as an executing entity, already working with multilateral and international entities as well. And so that positioned us to become an effective partner to our NDA as well as the GCF, for us to be able to work closely to develop the country work program for Belize, as well as an entity work program for our institution in our bid to become an accredited entity. And so we work closely with our NDA as well as the GCF Secretariat and Accreditation Panel to be able to achieve accreditation within a 16-month period. This collaboration and engagement and partnership that we started early on enabled us and greatly assisted us in the preparation of our entity work program to start building our project pipeline that would be responsive to the country's needs and priorities that are included in our national development frameworks, but in particular our climate change strategy and action plan. And so throughout that process of engagement, we were intimately involved in the process of developing the country work program for Belize's engagement with the GCF. And we had an early identification of potential projects to include in our pipeline that would be supporting the achievement of our NDCs. That relationship and partnership then extended beyond the pre-accreditation process to the post-accreditation process, where through the readiness program, we have continued to build our institutional capacity to serve in the role of direct access entity, as well as support the Belize NDA, and currently supporting other national institutions that are now in line to become accredited entities as well. So we, as an institution, I think our experience is a testament of what the strong relationship with GCF, as well as the NDA from the pre-accreditation process and even after, can make a difference in the effort that we're trying to do here as accredited entities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nayari. If I may, as a follow-up question, we're also aware, of course, PACT is serving as a readiness delivery partner, which is a separate role from the accredited entity role. Could you tell us a little bit about how in that role you're also supporting the objectives of Belize? Thank you.
Yes, indeed. We're also serving as delivery partner for readiness projects that our NDA is currently pursuing. We are implementing and managing 2 readiness programs right now that are seeking to gain accreditation for our Development Finance Corporation, as well as our Social Investment Fund and our NDA itself. And the role that we're currently playing is the delivery of all the objectives and activities that are included there, including the gap assessment of the institutions, the activities that are seeking to fill those gaps and prepare these national institutions in their bid for accreditation. And so we are sharing the experience that we have. We're sharing the capacity that we have been able to attain with GCF support, and we're now transferring that and continuing to build national capacity for our country. And it is hoped that we will continue delivering this role as well, and utilizing the lessons that we have learned, the experience that we've had, and transferring that to other like institutions in country. And we also belong to a network of informal network of delivery partners as well in the Caribbean region, where we support other projects and other institutions in the Caribbean region in the implementation of readiness as well. So while that is an informal arrangement that we have, it is something that is still beneficial for the Caribbean region and goes beyond the typical role of delivery partner.
Thank you, Nayari. With that, if I could invite Henk from Hasbank, as mentioned, Hasbank, as you know, is one of our direct access entities from Mongolia and our first private local banks. So we're very pleased to have you here joining the panel. As the first entity and direct access entity for Mongolia, if you could also share your experiences and how you went through the accreditation process and responding to country priorities for Mongolia.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the GCF for providing this opportunity to share a bit of our experiences as it relates to accreditation and engagement with the NDA as well as the GCF. Hasbank is a commercial bank that operates in Mongolia and has operated in the domain of climate financing since 2013, which was when we first found out about the GCF. And at that time, neither the NDA nor us had a lot of information on the GCF and about their activities. And it was all very much new territory for us. And subsequently in 2014, we've heard of an expo in Korea where the GCF was attending. And we proactively sought out the GCF in this event to figure out more about their activities and also ways to obtain accreditation and to cooperate with them. And during this process as well, you know, since Husbank was the first private access direct access private sector entity from a developing nation to be accredited, it was all very new for both us and the country. And because we did not obtain readiness or any other types of support, it was very much uncharted territory for us. But in our accreditation process, the NDA provided crucial support in providing their no objection letter. And we've also obtained invaluable guidance from the GCF private sector facility, who designated a dedicated staff member to act as our relationship manager to guide us along the way with this process. And the period of time that it took from our accreditation preparation until the GCF board approval took around 1.5 years. And shortly thereafterwards, in 2016, when we got our accreditation, we've also had our very first funded activity, the MSME business loan program for greenhouse gas emissions reduction, approved by the GCF board. And during this time, the national focal point at the time very quickly recognized the importance of developing an effective mechanism to cooperate with the GCF and to develop a country program. And subsequently, the national focal point conceptualized a readiness support activity in order to build national capacity for programming with the GCF, and as well as to develop a country program for which Husbank acted as the delivery partner and implemented the readiness support in 2018. And so in this regard, the NDA played a key role in identifying institutional gaps, as well as prioritizing climate objectives of the country to be achieved through GCF cooperation, and as well as engaging accredited entities in order to reach these objectives. And of course, after the implementation of this NDA readiness support in 2018, the country had enhanced capacity to program with the GCF as the relevant authorities were informed of the GCF processes, and the country program was developed along with the no objection process. And the country program, of course, was very crucial in helping the country as well as accredited entities to plan climate change related activities, and is a key document in facilitating engagement between the NDA and the various accredited entities in the country, and coordinating the climate change related activities, as well as enhancing coherence between these entities and removing duplication of efforts. And so in this regard, it was a very important document. And afterwards, in 2019, we've also acted as the delivery partner for a second NDA readiness activity that built on the first readiness activity to go further to enhance national capacity to actually integrate climate change into the medium and long-term development policies of the country, and also update the country program as well. So in our engagement with the NDA and GCF was summarized. I would summarize it in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ang. And of course, we're also very proud that not only are you the first direct access national entity, we also have other direct access national entities in Mongolia as well. You are also the first to have 4 projects that have been approved with the GCF. So we're very pleased to see the progress that has been made, particularly through the direct access channel in Mongolia. Now, if I may turn to Mr. Petrus Mutiali, again, the NDA for Namibia. We've also just heard earlier today, Dr. Osman Martinez speak about the experiences from the NDA's perspective in Belize. Petrus, if you could please share your experiences having nominated EIF as the first direct access entity, national entity within Namibia. What was your process in identifying country priorities for programming, and how did you nominate EIF against that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for organizing this very important event. Namibia takes issues of climate finance seriously. As you might recall, Namibia was among the few 6 countries that were bidding to host the Secretariat of the GCF way back in 2017 12, we were here in full force. So we in Namibia took a proactive approach. Our work is usually guided by the national policy on climate change and the National Climate Change Committee, which provides the oversight on the implementation modalities on climate-related matters. So we have been quite proactive. Way back in 2014, we came up with project pipelining, whereby we developed a long list of potential projects that can be implemented and accessing finance from the GCF. Out of those 40 project proposals or project ideas, we prioritize them and categorize them in terms of short-term, long-term, short, medium, and long-term. And then thereafter, we have tried to identify which suitable organizations could access funding for different types of projects. We have identified 4 national institutions. One is the Environmental Investment Fund. It's a young organization by then of only maybe about 3 years, but has been well established. The second one was the Development Bank of Namibia. Third one being the Agricultural Bank of Namibia. And the last one was then Bank Windhoek. So we looked at the Environmental Investment Fund to access grants for up to $10 million US. Then again, we looked at a bigger project, especially in the area of mitigation, that we think could best be dealt with by our Development Bank of Namibia. Then we also looked at what institution could be suitable to access finance for adaptation. And then we identified the Agricultural Bank of Namibia. And then we also looked at the private sector financing, for which then we have identified our national bank, which is called Bank Windhoek, to deal with matters pertaining to private sector financing. So further to that, we also developed our country programming strategy to GCF about 4 years back, and it is currently being updated in line with the updated nationally determined contribution. So we, through EIF, we have accessed funding through GCF. I think 4 projects have been funded so far, and we are looking forward to submit one additional institution for accreditation, also under a smaller category, to supplement the work of the Environmental Investment Fund, so that we will have 2 institutions accredited under that small grant category. Additionally, we also work with international institutions, financial institutions, including the African Development Bank, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, KFW, and some others, including also the multilateral accredited institutions such as UNDP, FAO, and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petrus. If I may now turn to Mr. Benedict Lavanda, the CEO for the Environmental Investment Fund. as, of course, the first nominated direct access entity for Namibia. We have actually just recently, just before this session, signed the accreditation master agreement for the second accreditation term. So we're very excited to see, of course, us move into the next phase of the next 5-year phase for our partnership. In the first 5 years, however, we've had a number of projects that we have also approved. EIF is also serving separately to the accredited entity role as a delivery partner for the readiness program. With that, if you could also share your experiences as to how you've oriented your programming to the country priorities.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to participate in this very important session. Not risking what my NDA has said, but just adding some information on top. When Namibia bidded to host the Green Climate Fund, the EIF was the secretariat to the bidding committee. And by that time, the Namibian government, of course, through the NDA, identified the importance of the GCF, and then requested EIF to align its operations alongside the GCF modalities. We then applied for accreditation, I think it was in 2016. And it took us about 6 months from the time of application to the time of board approval. And we're among the first 22 entities to be accredited by the GCF, where we later accessed 4 grants under the simplified approval process, the enhanced direct access, as well as the regular financial window. We've been guided by the NDA in terms of programming through the NDCs and also national priority programs under the GCF country program strategies that have been developed by the NDA, and that support culminated into the designs of these projects that have been implemented through the EIF. I have to say that what's more satisfying is that 2 of those projects will be closing off within the next 2 to 3 months, and we've really gathered a lot of experience and lessons to share. Talking about sharing lessons, because of the advance with implementation as well as the accreditation and reaccreditation, that has resulted in sharing a lot of lessons with other countries. For example, within the next week, we'll be hosting the NDA and the Environmental Fund of Eswatini to share lessons and to support them on the accreditation journey. We have also hosted the NDA of Zambia prior to the Development Bank of Zambia being accredited to the GCF. We hosted them for a week. We shared our GCF experience on terms of accreditation journey. Same applies to the Botswana Environmental Fund. So such kind of experience lessons has been extremely rewarding in our case. As we've heard, we've signed the second phase of our accreditation with the GCF, which we're so excited to be one of the first five entities to be reaccredited, and we're looking forward again to continue the relationship with the GCF, and of course with support from the NDA in terms of programming. And we've started already programming with the NDA, guiding us on priority key areas of the Namibian government, as well as the local context that would want to implement in the next 5 years. And we hope our projects will be designed to full proposals by at least next year for GCF board consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benedict, and for sharing those experiences that you have just mentioned about knowledge and sharing with other potential direct access entities and DAEs through their accreditation processes. With that, I'd like to turn to our final speaker, Ms. Alona Porsche from GIZ. GIZ, of course, is an international access accredited entity, but also a delivery partner for the GCF Readiness Program. That being said, I'd like to actually ask you to share the potential plans and the areas of work that GIZ may be thinking of in terms of other roles besides the accredited entity and the readiness delivery partner role. For example, looking at potentially executing projects alongside and working with direct access entities. Thank you, Alona.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join such a distinguished panel today. So yeah, GIZ is an international agency and we really consider our mandate to support partner countries to work in international cooperation and to jointly move forward. And we have a very strong capacity development mandate. So within that framework, we're also engaging in different roles with the GCF, as Stephanie just outlined. So very much on readiness, we are ourselves accredited, but we have set ourselves also the condition, let's say, that we would not act as an accredited entity in any way competing with a direct access entity. So GIZ is present with offices and colleagues in more than 120 countries, and often our colleagues work directly in the ministries of our partner countries. So really the way we engage also with GCF is to wait basically until we are approached or jointly see how we can, what the climate impact is that needs to be addressed, and then see whether GIZ has a role in this and what kind of role it would be. And we have been requested to act as accredited entity in a number of situations, which we're very happy to do, of course. But we also acting as an executing entity, so really making use of GIZ's technical capacity, also more look at the technical assistance focus. In this case, it has been with another international accredited entity, with the French AFD, 2 projects coming up hopefully very soon. But GIZ is also very interested and open to act as an executing entity to a direct access entity. Here, it would be particularly interesting where there is complementarity in the scope of accreditation. So GIZ is accredited for grants and on granting and project implementation. But so for example, to partner with a financial institution in one of our partner countries could be very interesting. We're very open to look further into this. Or it doesn't have to be, like, if GIZ can be of assistance in implementing a project that has been designed, and of course being involved in the process of designing a project, either through readiness, but also sort of beyond that, looking at specific project ideas, specific funding proposals that are to be developed. So maybe I stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alona. Thank you very much. And if I may say, a lot of very rich experiences that have been shared from NDAs, from direct access entities, from international access entities, about their journeys, not only as accredited entities, and certainly as NDAs identifying those potential accredited entities, but the journey through that programming process and in responding to country priorities. With that, I'd like to give them an opportunity in the final minutes for this session. If there are any questions that are coming from the audience, please do feel free to ask of the panel members that are here today. If I just may ask, should you have a question, we do have a few microphones that are around the room at the moment. And if you could please just state your name and your organization prior to your question. Do we have any questions from the floor?
Okay, thank you. Very good presentations from all the panelists. I'm Gloria Joseph from the NDA in Dominica. I have one question. I'd like to know from any of the countries, possibly maybe Belize represented here or the entities, if your NDA has been accredited, what has been the process? How long has it taken? Thanks.
Thank you for that question. So for example, we have an ongoing process right now with accreditation process with DFC, and it has taken almost 3 years. The process has been a little bit painful. There has been a lot of delays in just getting to sign the contracts, to contract consultants. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that a lot of the entities that are hiring the consultants is not necessarily GCF. It's accredited agents that we have that we are working with. So to answer your question, it's almost 3 years, and then we have started another process with the Ministry of Economic Development and the Belize Social Investment Fund. And just to get the approvals and the first disbursement, it almost took 1 year, so the process is lengthy. And that is where I believe everyone would want to see some improvement. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Thank you. If I may add to that as well, I understand the question was around whether the NDA itself was seeking accreditation. Could I ask for a clarification from the audience? Right. I understand, just to close up on that question, the role of the NDA and accredited entities are different roles, where the accredited entity is essentially the programming arm to respond to country priorities that are conveyed by the NDA to the GCF. So with these different roles, the majority of our accredited entities and our national direct access entities are separate organizations from the NDAs. That being said, I know that in addition to the mention for one of the applicants that is going through the process of preparation and going through the process of accreditation, Nayari from PACT also mentioned that the time it took for PACT to go through the accreditation process was approximately 16 months. Generally speaking, we have a very different range depending on the institution, depending, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the different standards for GCF accreditation that are applicable. We have an ability to be able to support entities through that development of institutional capacity building, even through the accreditation process, while an organization is getting accredited. But I do also want to indicate that organizations can still continue in the development of potential programming, working as executing entities to gain that experience of programming with GCF, even albeit not as the accredited entity as of yet. But there are certainly options to be able to move forward with programming in the universe of the different partners. With that, if we could take, I believe we have one additional question from the audience.
Sí, buenos días. Soy del Ministerio de Agricultura, Bosques, Medio Ambiente de Guinea Ecuatorial, Florentino Manguire. Me interesa el caso de Namibia. No me quedó claro las dos entidades que tienen, no me quedó claro cuánto tiempo duraron para la acreditación. Gracias.
If we could kindly ask the speaker to just ask the question one more time. Thank you very much.
Sí, el caso de Namibia es el que me interesa. Quiero saber cuánto tiempo tuvieron ellos para acreditarse, las dos entidades que tienen, la que está y la que está en curso. Gracias.
Okay. Yes, in case of the Environmental Investment Fund of Namibia, from the time of submission of our accreditation application to the time of board approval, it took us, just above 6 months. I think the lessons from that is that we had close relationship with the GCF in terms of learning their processes. So we were quite ready for accreditation submission. For example, prior to the application, we attended about 6 board meetings of the GCF. So we were able to know the requirements of the accreditation, and we're able to also to be aware of the future direction of the GCF, and that improved the quality of our application and the readiness of our accreditation application. So there were very few back and forth, and hence we were accredited in an extremely short time frame. Thank you.
Thank you, Benedict. If I may also ask Inc. from Mongolia, from Hasbank as the direct access entity, to also provide some insights in terms of the timing and that it took for Hasbank to seek accreditation.
Yes, of course. As mentioned previously, it took around 1.5 years from the beginning of the preparation of our accreditation application until GCF board approval. And the process itself, if I may delve into it, was quite fairly straightforward, and a lot of the sort of fiduciary and institutional requirements were in place, as since our shareholders consist a lot of international institutions, and we had sound corporate governance practices. And for us, since we're an accredited entity from Mongolia, a lot of time went into actually the translation of these documents into English in order to be able to present it to the GCF for our application. And yeah, the entire accreditation process, I believe the other panelists also have mentioned similar timelines. So I think 1.5 years seems to have been our experience in general. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, as we heard earlier from Nayari from Pat, I believe it was around 16 months in that case. We have time for just one more question from the audience, which I believe just right there.
Can I? Okay, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. Maya Sparta from Georgia NDA. I have a question to the Hasbank. I think the Hasbank is one of the greatest examples in engaging with the green climate funds. And from our perspective, that we are currently in a process of engaging with the GCF from the direct access entities, I would be asking you, what would be your key recommendations to the recently accredited direct access entities to properly engage with the fund? Thank you.
Yes, of course. So for recently accredited direct access entities, yes, close engagement with the NDA and the GCF is crucial, and it is very crucial to also develop sort of a pipeline of projects that should be entered into the country program, so that everyone is aligned in terms of the country's climate objectives and the accredited entities coordination in achieving these objectives. And of course, engagement with the NDA is also very crucial in order to obtain no objection letters for programming with the GCF. And for direct access entities, it is also very important to also develop internal capacity to develop projects, because otherwise transaction costs may be quite high. And yeah, it's besides internal capacity, also finding collaborating with other accredited entities or other international or national institutions can also help very much in terms of co-developing, co-financing, as well as sort of providing technical expertise to projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hank. With that, we are just a little bit over time with the session today. So I do see that we have a few other questions that are in the audience. Very much encourage you to please feel free to approach our panel speakers, or for those of us at the GCF Secretariat, we'd be more than happy to answer your questions after this session. Just to conclude for the session today, as you know, we have a number of different partnerships in order to move forward with climate action. The accredited entity role, executing entities, co-financiers, readiness delivery program partners that are all part of the universe, as well as many others that are involved in moving forward with climate action. In terms of identifying the best way forward, I do also want to highlight that the GCF readiness program is available for NDAs as you're planning your country programs and your investment plans to be able to help identify which are the entities that are most suitable within country, looking at the existing accredited entity network of 113 partners and looking at potential organizations that may not be accredited as of yet in order to fully deliver upon your country programming objectives with GCF. With that, I thank you for your attention today. We very much look forward to moving ahead with you. Thank you.